So what we're being asked to do globally across all parts of the business is to move away from what we call the linear economy. The make, use, dispose methodology is no longer sustainable. We can't keep drawing minerals from the planet. We can't keep creating waste and creating too much for the planet to deal with. So what does that look like? You may have heard of new initiatives and the new model. In fact, the circular economy isn't a new model. It's a principle which has been around for over 20 years. But what does that look like in practicality in and around IT? So let's just take an example of here you sit within the business. And when we say you, this is all of your infrastructure, this is all of the products that you have in place. All of those products contain minerals. They also contain assets which are still kind of fit for purpose. So our goal with Recirc IT is to help you reduce both cost, consumption, and waste. And how do we do that? Ultimately, the biggest difference that you could make in terms of the environmental footprint that you have, and both the financial footprint that you have, is to try to reduce some of this consumption and therefore kind of reduce some of the waste. How do we do that? So the first thing that we can do is how can we support you to keep assets in place for longer? What do we know about typical product life cycles? If this is a particular product that you use over time, typically what organizations are working to is anywhere between a 3 to 5 year refresh cycle. So, and what we know about the way that the OEMs have a lot of control of that is they have a lot of these timelines, these milestones in place, end of sale, end of life milestones, which prompt the refresh cycle. So we know typically once a product gets to an end of life period, that's when the new product would come around. The other thing that we know is another factor which controls that is the cost to support the assets as the devices age. So I've personally worked in the OEM world. If you came to me with an issue and you said, listen, our costs of keeping products in place are increasing, how do I go about it? What I'd know is I'd say to you, if your cost to support the older product here is 3, but if you replace it with the new products, the cost to support is 1, you make a saving there of 2. So here's a quotation to buy all of the new products. But that doesn't fix the problem around the cost or the waste. So as an example, what Recirc IT can do, there is no end-of-life milestone in our books. Essentially, we will keep supporting assets from a hardware replacement and a technical support perspective until the end of time. So we can reduce that end-of-life milestone for you. The second part is we can reduce the cost to keep those assets in place for longer. We've looked into the research. There is no reason why older assets should cost you more to support as the devices age. They actually require less in terms of iOS updates, in terms of product updates, and there's certainly the cost to replace those assets over time decrease. So within that, we then get to reduce some of the cost with the support and with the consumption if we get to delay some of that capital outlay. And of course, when we do that, we then get to reduce some of the waste that's going into the business. But let's take an example of where you do have to do some of those refreshes. Obviously, there's a number of different factors which are coming into play now. Security are asking us to do more and more of the replacements. They're looking to things like end of vulnerability support to replace those assets. So what do we know? How can we help you achieve some of the circular economy goals within the environment? The first thing we can do is we can make a promise that we will repurpose whole assets. So what we will do, we'll take an assessment of what the products are that you have in place. Do it actually have any value within the marketplace? So we can help to put some of those assets as a whole asset back into the marketplace, and we can give you value back from that. If we can't do that, if we can't keep if there is no value within the whole assets, then what we can do is actually break down those assets to extract the valuable minerals, the gold, the copper, the nickel, and we can then repurpose those back into the market. And what we actually do within Australia is we supply those minerals back to the IT manufacturers. So we get to repurpose the minerals back into the supply chain. And the last point about all of this, and the challenge that we see when it comes to the e-waste side of the business, is nobody typically gets anything back. What we know is if you give these back to the OEM, that the OEM typically e-waste about 88% of all of the devices that are handed back to them. So that's not good. That's not working in the purpose of the the circular economy. So we make a promise to our clients that under no situation will you have to pay to have these assets removed. There is always value for the products that you have, and value in the gold, the copper, the nickel, and we're able to extract those using a hydro smelting process, not the old age process of using furnaces. So it's a tremendously energy efficient, and we can help deliver that value back to you, so that ultimately it becomes a reward back to the business. And what we essentially then propose to you is that you take products with the value that we give you for the older assets that we take from you. We ask you then with that credit that we give you, to procure products from the market that already exists. So we don't want you buying products from the manufacturer, because those have all of the upstream impacts in terms of the mining and all of the complications around that. If the product already exists, and that product might be brand new, it might be pre-owned, it might be new surplus. If it already exists, if you're acquiring from this market, then you're doing it less to contribute towards the upstream impact of the consumption model. So if you are interested in having a conversation around the circular economy, how do you get your business to start shifting from this consumption model, we'd obviously love a conversation with you.